Hello everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Steven Obayuwana, and in this video, I'll be walking you through the steps on how you can create a GitHub Profile Finder using HTML, CSS and Javascript. So currently on my screen, I have my project opened, and in the project folder, I have an image. Okay, this is the image that we'll be using just to test our design. Okay, so get started on this project. First thing first, what you need to do is to create your project file. So I will come here now and let me create an HTML file. Let me call this index. Okay, so this is the main file that we'll be using to write our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code. So let's just start by writing it. Let's add a title. Let's say GitHub. Sorry. GitHub Profile Finder. Okay, so inside the body tag, let's just quickly create the structure of our app or of our GitHub Profile Finder. Okay, let's start by creating a container. This container now is going to hold all our contents. Okay, so inside this container, I want to add an H1. Let's add an H1. This H1 is going to hold the title of our app or the type of software we are trying to develop, which is the GitHub. Let me just copy it from the title right here, GitHub Profile Finder, and I'm going to paste it here inside our H1. Okay, so let me quickly preview. Let me open the preview tab so that we can see what we are trying to create just as we are doing it. Okay, so after creating this H1 element, what we need to do next is that I want to create a search or an input element with a button whereby you can type in a username and search for that particular user if he's on GitHub. So I'm going to create a group now to group our button and our input element. So let me just call this a class of search group. Okay, and inside the search group I want to add an input element. Okay, an input element with an ID. Let me give this an ID. Let me say search input. Okay, and also I'm going to give it a button. Let me add a button. Let's call this search, and this button I want to also give it an ID of btn search. Okay, so whenever you want to search for a user, you just come here, you type in the username and click on this search button, and the user information will be displayed below. So let's create that section now that will display the user information. Let's just call it user group. And inside this user group, we want to display the information of the user. We want to display the image, for instance, or the avatar. Let's say let me just say Mr. Steven, and let's give this an ID called avatar. Okay, and after the image, we want to display the full name of the user. Let's use an H2, and let's say that's the full name. Okay, and under the full name, we want to display the username of the user. Okay, let's say this is the username, for instance, and let's give this one an ID as well. Let's say full name, and let's call this let's give it an ID. Let's call this let's say username. Okay, So after the username, we want to also display the user bio. Okay, so let's add that. Let's say this is user bio. Okay, just add this smiley face. Okay, then after this, we want to, let's say for instance now, when you search for a particular user and the user is not found, we want to display an error message stating that this user is not found. So let's just wrap this inside a container. Let's wrap this in a container. Let's see. We want to wrap it. Let's give it a class of let's say user info. Okay, so want to wrap this. Then the error message that I want to display if a user is not found, let's just add a paragraph here and let's say user not found. Okay, just say let's add an emoji and let's use this one. Okay, so when the user is not found, it's going to display this message. Okay, so we just want to create the structure of our app, our GitHub Profile Finder, so that we can use the style to later style it and also the JavaScript to implement the functionality. Okay, so so this is it. Let's just quickly go to our style tab and let's style it. Let's just come to the head section. Let's add our style. Okay, and let's first start by using this. Let's remove the margins from our HTML elements. That's the before and after elements. Okay, and let's also use the before. And we want to remove the default margin that has been added to our HTML element. So let's just set margin to 0. And also let's style our HTML content. Let's give it a font size. Let's give our HTML content a font size of 62.5%. 62.5%. Okay, and after that, let's just let's style our body. Let's give it, okay, let's just set display property to flex, because we want to arrange our entire element. We want to arrange our entire content in the middle of our page. So let's give our body a display property of flex, and let's justify to center and align to center. Justify center and align center. Okay, so after that, what we need to do next is that we need to style our container. Let's style our container. Remember, the container is a class, so we are going to use the container. So we want to style our container. Let's just also set the property to the display property to flex, and we are going to change the flex direction to column, because we want our content to be arranged in that format. So let's set our flex direction to column, and also let's use the justified content and align items center and align items to center. Okay, so after that, what we want to do next, we want to align our text. We want this text to be in the middle. So let's use the text align property. Text align property and set it to center. That's going to take our text to the middle. Okay, so let's add some spacing. Let's add some spacing between each of these contents. Let's just set the gap. Let's add a gap of 1 rem. Okay, and also let's add some padding. Let's add some padding to our container. Padding, let's say padding to 2 rems. 2 rem from the top, and 0 for the right, and let's say 5 rem on the bottom, and let's say 0 for left. Okay, so what we need to do next, let's style our text. Let's try to set the font size of each of our text in the web page. Let's start by setting the size of our h1 element. So let's say our h1 element, we want to use a font size of 3 ranks. Okay, you can see it right here. Our h1 element, we'll set the font size to 3 ranks. Let's add some margin to the top and bottom, 3 ranks, and left and right to 0. Okay, so next, let's set the font size of our h2 elements. So let's say h2. For our h2 elements, we want to use the font size of 2 ranks. Let's use 2 ranks. Okay, that's for our name. I want to use the font size of 2 ranks, and for the username, let's increase the font size of the username. So let's see our username. Our username has an ID username, so let's copy that and come here. It's an ID username, and let's say the font size to, let's use 1.7 rems. Okay, and let's set the font style to italics. Okay, yeah, that looks good. So what we need to do next is let's style this our error message to differentiate it from the other text. So this is it. Let's just give it an ID, and let's say error message. Okay, so let's copy the ID and let's apply some style to our error message. We want to set the color to red because it's an error, as you can see. And also want to set the font size. Let's increase the font size. So let's make this font size here to be let's say 1.7 rems. Okay, let's just make it 2 rems. So that looks good. So what we need to do next now is let's size our avatar or our image. Let's quickly just size our image, and also let's just increase the text for our bio. So we're gonna get it right here. Here's the bio. Let's give it an ID. Let's say bio. So we're gonna copy it and come here and say our bio. We want to increase the font size to 1.7 rem. 1.7 rem. Okay, that's good. So what we need to do next now is that let's size our avatar image. So let's get it here, avatar image, and avatar. Let's just set a width of 15 rems. 15 rem, that's small. Let's increase it to 17 rems, and let's set a border radius of 50% to make it round. Okay, then also let's just apply some margin to the top and bottom. Let's apply some spacing to the top, 1 rem, 1.5 rem, and for the right we want to say 0, and for the bottom we want to give it 1.5. Let's just give it 1 rem. 1 rem for the bottom. Okay, and the left we want to set it to 0. Okay, so after that let's just style our input and also the user section. Let's add some styling to this section. So let's come here and say our search group, which is a class. I'm going to say our search group and also our user group. Let's get the user group and let's type both together. Our user group, let's give it a background color of let's say light gray, and let's say light gray. Okay, and let's change the color. Okay, so we've set the background color of our user group and also of our search group. Let's add some padding. And let's set the padding top to be, let's say, 1 rem, and padding top and bottom should be 1 rem, and let's add left and right padding to 2 rem. Okay, then also let's just set width to be 100%. Okay, and let's add some border radius. Let's use 1 rem. Okay, let's say 0.5 rem. Okay, good. So what we need to do next is that I want us to style this our input element, our input, and also our search button. So let's style that. Let's quickly style that. So we're going to say our input elements. Where is it? Our input. This is our input. So let's copy it. Our input. We want to set the font size of our input, and let's say 1.7 rem. 1.7 rem. Okay, and we want to add some padding. Let's say 0.5 rem and 1 rem left and right. Okay, then also we want to apply the same style to our button. So let's get the button, and we'll apply the same style to the button, and also we want to make our button look clickable by adding the cursor pointer. So let's do that for our button, only our button, and let's set the cursor to pointer. This will make our button to look clickable. Okay, so after that, let's add our JavaScript code, so that whenever we type in a particular username here and click on the search, it's going to populate this record dynamically. So let's go to our JavaScript section. Let's just add our JavaScript here. So after adding our JavaScript, what we need to do now is to get each of these elements using the JavaScript. Let's get each of the elements using our JavaScript. So we are going to declare some variables, and let's say for the first element now, we want to get this input, or this our input element here. We want to get this input element. So let's copy, and we're going to say search input. The search input equals document dot get element by ID, and we are going to pass in the ID of our input, but we are not going to stop there, because we want to get the value that is being written in inside this input element. So we are going to say dot value. Okay, that will give us the value that has been written here, and we are going to store it inside this variable. So next is that we want to get this our input. We've gotten the input. Next we want to get our search button. So what we are going to do, let's just duplicate this code, and let's say we want to get the search button search, and let's replace this button search, and I'm going to replace this, and let's remove this because we're not getting the value for the button. Instead, we want to get the value for only the input. Okay, so We want to create a function right now that will run whenever we click on this button, because whenever we click on this button, we want to get the user information from GitHub. So we are going to create a function now for this button. So we are going to say our button search dot add event listener, and we are going to listen for the click event. Okay, so we want this function to run. We want a particular function to run whenever we click on this button, and we are going to use the asynchronous function, okay, because that's the function we need to get data from an API. So we are going to create a function right here, an asynchronous function, and let's just give it a name. Let's give it a name, and let's say get GitHub data. Okay, and we don't want to pass in a parameter, so we are just going to remove the params, and we are going to call the function here. Okay, so whenever we click on this button, it's going to run this function, this asynchronous function. It's going to run it. So what we are going to do now, inside our asynchronous function, we are going to get each of these elements that we want to display on the page. Okay, so let's quickly do that. Let's declare some variables to store each of these elements. Let's say the first element, we want to get the user avatar. So we are going to say avatar, let's say const avatar equals document dot get element by ID. Okay, and we are going to pass the avatar ID. Let's just duplicate this, and also want to do the same thing for the full name. I want to get the full name and also the username and the bio. I want to also get the bio from GitHub. So we are going to store each of these items inside our variable. I want to store each of these items inside our variable. Let's also get the error message. Let's get the error message and error message. So that's our error message. Then also what we are going to do now is that we want to get the information from GitHub. So let's get that information for GitHub now using the try catch. Let's use the try catch, and we are going to create a variable for our response. Let's call this variable response equals await. Then we are going to fetch the data from GitHub. Okay, let's use the backtick because we want to pass a value to our GitHub API. So whenever the user enters a particular username, we want to attach that username to the API so that it can get the data from GitHub. That's why we are using this backtick here. So we are going to say https://api.github.com/users, then / the username. So we want to pass in a variable right here, which is the value that is being entered in this text box. Now we want to pass it to this our API URL. So we are going to get the value here, which is this input. So let's copy search input, and we are going to pass it right here. So our API now will now be api.github.com/users/ the username that the user is going to fill in this text box or in this input. So we are going to check if our response is not successful. If response .ok is not successful, we are going to throw an error. So let's throw an error. So let's throw new error, and we want to say user not found, and we want to display, let's display an error message. Let's use the backtick to display the error message. So we want to display the response status. Okay, so what we need to do next now is we need to get the data. So let's get the data. We're going to say const data equals await response.json. Okay, so after getting the data now, we are going to use this data to populate our HTML element. So for instance now, like the avatar, we are going to change the avatar to the avatar of the GitHub user. Okay, so we are going to set the source attribute. Instead of using this source attribute here, we are going to set it to the data that we are getting from GitHub. We are going to say avatar.source, okay, will now be equals to data, but we are going to get the avatar URL. Which is holding the avatar image from GitHub. Okay, so we are going to do this same thing. We are going to do it for our other HTML element, like the full name dot text content. We are going to set the full name dot text content to our data we are getting from GitHub, which is data.name. Or if the name is not available, we want to do something like this: user full name not, or let's just say user has no full name. Okay, then we are going to do the same thing for the username. We're going to say username dot text content. The username dot text content equals data dot login. Okay, then we are going to do the same thing for our bio. The bio dot text content equals data dot bio. Or if the user has no bio data, we want to display user has no bio. Okay, so right now we've successfully gotten the data from our GitHub. So let's just try to catch if there's an error. So let's use this error message. Let's get this error dot text content equals user not found. Let's say the user is not found. User not found, and let's get the error message. Let's say error dot message. Yeah, error dot message. Okay, so let's search. Oh, it says user not found. Let's see. User not found. Let's see again. I'll search. Says user not found. So let's see where the error is coming from. it seems this is the response we are getting currently that says user not found. So let's go through our code to know where the problem is coming from. Let's get this. Okay, let's put this our search input inside our function. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, yeah, you can see now it's getting the information from our GitHub. Let's say we are searching for a different user. You can see this is the user image or the user avatar, and the user has no full name. This is the username, and the user has no bio. And also this our error message is still showing, so we are going to, by default, we are going to remove the error message. So let's just come here and let's remove each of these. Let's remove the source attribute, and also let's remove the name here, the name we added by default, and let's remove the username, and let's remove the bio. Okay, let's remove the error message. So let's see, let's try again, and let's search. You can see this is our user information. Let's search for a different user. Search, this is a different user, and let's search for a user that does not exist. Search. Okay, this is the error message, and also it's still showing the user information. So whenever a user is not found, we need to hide this information because the user is not found. There's no need of showing the previous user details. So let's do that now using our JavaScript. So let's come here, and by default we want to hide the, let's just create a class now to do that. Let's create a class first to do that. Let's call this class hidden. So whenever a user is not found, we want to apply this class now to our HTML element. Let's set the display property to none. Okay, and let's go back to our JavaScript. So we want to use JavaScript now to manually, or we want to use JavaScript now to add this class to our HTML element. So by default, we want to hide the user information, which is this. We want to hide the user information. So let's start by setting our error message. We want to set the text content to an empty string. Okay, we want to set our text content to an empty string, which means we don't want to display anything yet for our error message. We only want to display the error message whenever there's an error. So let's see. Yeah, the error message is not displaying. We want to display it only when there's an error, which is something like this. When there's no error, let's see. When there's no error, we don't want to display the message, something like this. Okay, but when there's an error, we want to display the message. And also, we have successfully achieved that now, because when there's no error, it's not going to display the message. Only when there's an error, that's when it will display the error message. And also, we want to hide this. When there's an error, we don't want to display any user information. So we are going to do that. Let's get the class or the section that holds the user information, which is this user info. Remember, this is the section that holds the user information. We want to hide this section whenever there's an error. So we are going to get that now using JavaScript. Let's see if we have done that. Okay, let's duplicate this and say the user info, which is the part that holds the avatar, the full name, username, and the bio. We want to get it using JavaScript. So user info get element by ID, or sorry, get element. We used a class here, so let's just use the query selector, document.query selector, and we want to get the class user info. Okay, so we want to get the user info. So what we are going to do now, we're going to say user info dot class list dot add. Okay, we want to add that hidden class list to our user info by default. Okay, so we want to add the hidden class, okay, to our user info. Then only when the user info is available, that's when we want to display it, which is in this part. Okay, remember on this part now, we have successfully gotten the user information. So we want to remove the class list now from it. So we are going to say user info dot class list dot remove. Okay, want to remove the hidden class from it. So when we've successfully gotten the user information, we are going to remove the hidden class from it. So let's see. So this is it. Let's search for a different user. And this is it. Then let's check when there's an error. You can see it now. When there's an error, it's no longer showing the user information. It only shows the error. But when the information is correct, it's going to show only the user information. So that's it, guys, for this video. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.